Hi, good morning, everyone. It's so great to see folks in person and online today. And thank you, Jeff, for hosting us at Northwest Youth Corps today in Eugene. Arisa Shairami for the record, and I call this meeting to order on June 12th at 10:09 a.m. And I'm going to pass it to Melissa.
Thanks, Melissa Gallardo, Council Administrator. I'll take roll call. Zan Ojero. Present. Daniela Avila. Present. Parsa Chanrami.
Here.
Andrew Copeland.
Good morning.
Great. If you're online, please unmute and say you're present. Yosemite Plaza. Jenny Glass. Alex Johnson.
Present.
Robin Johnson. Jeff Justison.
Here.
Sam Coe. Nathan Latanzio.
Here.
Kim Leh.
Here.
Andy Leonard.
Here.
Tabidi Lewis. Christina McMahon. Jeff Parker.
Here.
Savannah Relatos.
Present.
Molly Rogers. Hannah Schroeder.
Present.
Oh, sorry.
That was Hannah.
That was Hannah Schroeder. Okay, great. Thank you. Janelle Theobald.
Here.
Kiwi Wilson. And we have quorum for votes later.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
All right, to me, thanks everybody. Yeah, great to be down here in Eugene. We have a number of staff also present, so thank you staff for being here, probably mostly several in the room and online. So maybe we'll just do quick introductions. Like Joy, do you want to say hello?
Yeah. Hello everyone. My name is Joy Snyder. I am the admin specialist with Prevention and Justice, and it's really lovely to meet you.
Thanks, Joy.
Good morning, everybody. Abraham Magana. I'm a grant manager and operations analyst.
Skip some. She's a council.
Oh.
Yeah, she's council, so we skipped.
We're just doing staff.
Yeah, we're just doing staff.
Leave anyone out.
Sorry.
Because I am Lawrence White, the racial and ethnic disparity coordinator with the Prevention and Justice team, so I had to make sure.
Yeah, good. Appreciate it, Lauren.
And I'm honestly the associate director of the youth development division. And my job is just as fun as Paul's job. You know, so.
Brian Deppman, director, you'll get more, we can do more in the room introduction, but we'll just do staff again. Brian Deppman, director.
Also, the other associate director with a fun job as well.
Great. And then on the screen, maybe Cord, do we want to start with you? I know you're there, but I can't easily see everybody else. But
Can we take the slides down for online introductions?
Yeah. Great.
Hi, this is Cord Bucher. I'm the Deputy Director with Youth Development Oregon. And I'll pass it over to Jared, who's the next staff person I see.
Morning, everyone. Jared Shaw, Grant Manager and Workforce Analyst, and I will pass it to Molly.
Good morning, Molly Burns, Grant Manager and Re-engagement Analyst, and I'll pass it to Bill.
Good morning, Bill Hansel, Data Lead and Grant Manager. And let's see, I'll pass it to Tanasia.
Thanks. Tanasia Bishop here, Youth Grant Administrative Specialist. I'm not sure if there's any other staff online, so I'll pass it back to you all in the room.
Thanks, Tanasia. I also see Melissa. I see Molly Rogers. Hey, Molly. Good morning. Want to say hi?
Good morning. Molly Rogers, Wasco County Youth Services, and a member of the Youth Development Council and chair of the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee. And I see my colleague Jeff made it to Eugene today. So sorry I wasn't a passenger with you today, but it's been a ride here.
Oh, goodness, Molly. We know there's a lot going on. So great to see you. And Christina, I see you. Hi, Christina McMahon. You want to say hi? Oh, you're muted, Christina.
We can still.
We can still, no, but anyway, Christina McMahon, Clackamas County, Director, Juvenile Services. And I see Kim also too, Kim Lett. Hey, Kim, wanna say hi?
Good morning,
Wait.
everyone. My name is Kim Le. I'm on the council.
Thanks, Kim. And I know we've got some other guests and attendees. So we will keep it moving. All right, so I'm just gonna do a couple things here. For those in the room, Jeff, do you want to say a quick, like, just like housekeeping, like where stuff is?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brian. Welcome everyone to Northwest Youth Corps' headquarters campus here in Eugene. You all made it here, which is the hard part because it's hard to find. Down a residential street, doesn't look like there'd be a business at the end of it. Housekeeping stuff. So restrooms are here just to my left. There's one for female identifying folk, one for male identifying folk. There's gender neutral bathrooms if you choose that. There's a sign that says staff lounge area. There's a couple of independent bathrooms there. In the event the fire alarm goes off, we assemble down at the big log, the monument sign where it says Northwest Youth Corps. In the event that the earthquake happens and it smells like gas, you run the opposite way, uphill, because there is a 18-inch, 300 PSI gas line that runs right down Augusta Street, goes from Washington all the way to the bottom of Southern California, right down our street. And then newly added to our housekeeping is if any law enforcement in immigration customs enforcement comes to our door, we do not let them in. We just, it is my job or a warranted deputy director to manage that. So if you see anything like that, just let me know. Thank you.
Jeff? Do you want to do public meeting reminders? Do you want to do those process? Sure, I don't. Who wants to go?
Sure, there's also, Tanisha, can you go to that slide?
Yeah.
I'm happy to go over
The meeting reminders slide.
Wonderful. So again, Parsa Chanrani, Chair of the Council, wanted to share, since this is a public meeting, as a reminder, before you speak, make sure to say your name and role before you start speaking. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted within 2 weeks on the Youth Development Oregon YouTube channel. And this is a formal advisory meeting of the state. So if you're a member of the public and wish to comment, there's a public comment section on the agenda at approximately 1:40 p.m. today. And members of the public have up to 3 minutes to speak per person or per group. And if you'd like to comment, please send a chat to Melissa Gallardo, who's here, to let her know that you're interested in speaking during the public comment section.
Thanks, Parsa.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna do the roll call. I'm gonna move, will you move us forward, Tanisha, to slide 6? And probably want to start, well, yeah, this, you can leave it there, Tanisha. Before I jump to kind of a quick legislative session update, I do want to, again, welcome, appreciate everybody being here. We do have some new faces, either here in the room or online. So I believe everyone had the chance to meet Nate at our last meeting. Nate's here in the room, came down from, well, works for Youth Era, which is based here in Eugene, but I think it's a little north.
Yeah, at 11, yes.
Yeah, at 11. So thanks again, good to see you, Nate. And then to my, and Daniela, you tell me, were you at the last meeting or no?
I was not.
You were not. So Daniela, new. We skipped over, but we're now coming back to Daniela. And came up from Roseburg. So we appreciate your being here. Douglas ESD, Douglas Education Service District, does a lot of work with youth and re-engagement. So really appreciate your being here. So one new face, and then to my left, Jeff Justison, County Commissioner in Wasco County, to the council, just like appointed, I think in the last week or two.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if Daniela or Jeff, if either of you want to say anything, since I'm doing all the talking.
I would just say really quickly, my background, for 32 years, I was involved in the juvenile justice system, 13 years for Wasco County as a juvenile probation officer. And for 19 years as the manager of the Northport Juvenile Detention Facility in the Dalles, which is a regional facility, 4 counties on an intergovernmental agreement, funding and running a juvenile detention facility and a jail. But I was on the juvenile side, and I retired a couple of years ago. And then someone that's on the call online may have talked me into running for county commissioner, and may have talked me into applying to this. So, but that's all speculation. Yeah. Yeah. So I look forward to participating. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you. My path has been very interesting, wove in and out of education. I started at RCC, Road Community College, in the dual credit and early college program about 15 years ago. And I was there for quite a few years. I became a STEM hub director, one of the first in the state of Oregon for Southern Oregon. And then I bounced around and supported a variety of different community colleges, ESBs, really usually focused around disadvantaged youth and career technical ed. Those are my passions. There's somewhere beautiful in the middle of that. And now I have found myself landed at Douglas ESB and still.
And then online, I believe our newest council member is Andrew Copeland, Chief of Police in the city of Kaiser. I don't see Andrew, but I heard your voice earlier. Andrew, do you want to say a word or two?
Sure. Andrew Copeland, been at Kaiser Police for 23 and a half years. Just super happy to be here, part of this group. Went to Washington, D.C. with a great group of folks and had some excellent training. Yeah, just super excited to be here and to help out with the youth.
Thank you, Andrew. And I think, is that all the new people? Then somebody, I'm looking around the room. Did I get it?
I'm trying to remember how far back we're going, but yes. And we will have more chances for some introductions.
Yeah, exactly. So wanted to do that. And then wanted to jump to just director's update. I don't know that, I think you all have like the agenda in front of you, so I don't need to spend a lot of time going over that. You see, we've got a couple of votes today, morning and midday. One, we'll turn it over here in a little bit after more kind of just individuals, some small group checking stuff, but we'll move to Anya and Molly talking a bit about juvenile crime prevention plans. And in the middle of the day, we're going to spend some time doing some breakouts around our strategic plan. But then we'll ask the council to have a vote around adoption of the plan. And we'll have some good, I think, time for conversation as a part of that. We'll do some committee updates and an RFA update too that Paul will do. So pretty full agenda. But I think time for some conversation and a break around 11 if we, unless we decide that we just need to keep things moving. So excited about that. But the thing I wanted to bring to folks' attention first thing is a quick update on the legislative session. Literally just in the last day or two, we've kind of been getting information about our budget. And so figured like hot off the presses, here's what we know. I'm excited to say that we've got some good information to share. Cord can help me. I'm not sure if I imagine there was a committee hearing yesterday and for perhaps hopefully a vote to move this out of committee to a floor vote. I'm assuming that's what happened. Yes, Cord?
That is what happened. It is now going to actually go to a full Ways and Means before it goes to the floor.
Okay. From committee to full Ways and Means, and then ultimately a floor vote. And so the governor ultimately will sign the bill, which has not happened yet. But I feel like I'm going to just share some information that's public at this point, right? So know that this is not like set in stone, but good information nonetheless that we wanted to share. Or do you want to go through these quick bullets and then maybe I'll do the the money stuff.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. Uh, Yeah, I'll pass it back. I'll cover this quickly and then give it back to you, Brian. For the record, this is Cord Bucher, Deputy Director. Last time we met, we shared a few bills that named Youth Development Council or division, and would create some new programs or responsibilities. Right now, none of those bills are poised to advance. They were referred to Ways and Means, but haven't been worked. There are still 2 weeks left in session, so things could happen, but we're not expecting anything. There was a violence prevention study bill that seems unlikely to move. The care, I believe it's the care program, is kind of expanding something that's been happening in a few counties in Eastern Oregon to support youth school attendance. That also does not seem that it's going to go anywhere this session. And then there was also one of the bills related to literacy that would have had us be on an advisory group around the literacy. And right now that bill doesn't seem to be getting worked, although I've heard it might still come out of session. There are some other bills that we've been tracking, particularly some around the Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission that are getting work sessions now, where there's some work around statewide prevention planning. If that bill passes, we've talked with them about how we can work together, on that. So there may be some things coming out of session that will be of interest and give us some work to do. But right now, nothing that tasked us with brand new programming appears to be going forward. So as Brian mentioned, the ODE budget, where our budget lives, had a work session, an education subcommittee in Joint Ways and Means yesterday, and it was passed on to the full Ways and Means, and then from there, it'll go for the floor vote. And our budget appears to be headed for adoption without reductions in our grant and aid, which is what we've kind of talked about in the past. We're really happy that the legislature found fit not to reduce any of our grant funding. We actually have some additional funding, and we've I think also shared that there were some funds that were set to phase out from this biennium that were left in the starting current service level budget that the governor's budget was created from. And that was 2.5 million approximately. That was for the Gresham East Multnomah Outreach Prevention and Intervention Project. And we did flag this for the legislature, that it was not money that we should have had in our budget. But we noted what it was, and it was up to the legislature to determine what to do. And they decided they would like to actually keep it in there, which is not totally surprising, as this had been something that had been funded in one shot, appropriations the last couple of sessions, and was a real important project for one of the co-chairs of the subcommittee on education. Representative Ruiz has been a big champion for this, so we're really excited that it will actually be now permanently funded. We just heard this morning that the legislature communicated to ODE's budget office that is the intention, and we'll expect to see, in the budget report, an indication that that's why we got that money. So I'll show you a table in just a second that shows the grant and aid breakdown as it stands currently. I'll also note that our operational budget does include the requested new permanent position. This was continuing the limited duration position that was Sally Deck, our future ready analyst. We put forward a proposal to keep the position and to expand the focus to doing a few different things, including really standing up and facilitating the convening work that we've been doing with our grantees, which has been really impactful, and we want to see even more happen there. Providing more support to our youth council members and more of a liaison with the other youth advisory councils that are now set up in various state agencies. We really want to have a stronger interface with those groups, since I think they can both inform us and potentially, some of the young people who serve in those bodies might want to one day serve on the Youth Development Council. So really building the connectivity with different youth leadership tables is another part of this. And a few other projects that I think will be really beneficial and exciting, and just leveraging our work and doing more for our grantees. So I'll go to the next slide if I can. I think, Melissa, you've got that. And I'll talk about the dollars. This table here is just a breakdown of the different grant programs. I'll tell you quickly, like the total grant and aid budget shown in the LFO's recommendations for this bill, for our budget bill, is $35,870,057. That's everything general fund, our federal fund limitation, our other fund limitation, which includes the Title 20 dollars, and our re-engagement funds that come through student success. So that's the top line number is 35.9 million. Hi, Molly. I see your hand.
Molly Rogers. I have a question. As you share the numbers, will you share with us what it was last time?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think
Thanks.
yeah, and I've got that. So the general fund number I've got was 15 million. The general fund number so it was 15.3 million last biennium. Our general fund this biennium is 18.6. I've actually got to go and dig around for the total dollar amount we had in grant and aid, because CSL did not include some of the things that we wound up getting. Like, it didn't include the Gresham funds. It I think did include the Future Ready, which has been phased out. I want to say it was roughly 42 or 43 million when you include the extra, like 7 million in Future Ready funds that has sunset. So I can go back and I can provide the exact number. I can get that in follow up, but I have to actually go pull it from a few different places, because we wound up getting more money during the course of the biennium, and I've got a total somewhere, but I've got to dig for it. So I think that our total grant and aid, when you include all the different funding streams, has dropped, but that was expected because we had gotten 7 million in federal funds that expired. And we also had a total of 4.5 million for Gresham, and now there's 2.5 in general fund that's going to be in this biennium. So there were reductions, but they were reductions that we had expected. And the general fund amount has gone up, and it's up in part because of they refer to the CSL, or continuing service level, which is where you were at plus about 4% for inflation, which is just an arbitrary number, not actual inflation. And so the 4% increase, you can kind of see, like, if the juvenile crime prevention funds, for example, the first line here, that number is based on the CSL number. So that's, that has gone up slightly from last biennium. I've got a table I can probably quickly grab and tell you what the number was last year. I've got several tables. I got to find the right one. Pardon me. So it was 6.635 million. So that one, here you can see has gone up by about roughly 300,000, a little less. So that's about a 4% increase. Same is true for some of the other funding lines that already existed here. So I'll walk quickly through this. So youth investments, that is a combination of general fund and other funds, which is the actual federal Title 20 dollars that pass through to us from ODHS. So you can see here on the right side, there's some notes on the funding stream. So it's a total of 14.8 million. It's about 8.9 in general fund, and then there's a set number 5.8 million in other funds. That is, in the actual budget, there will be more limitation, and limitation just means permission to spend, and that will increase even if the federal dollars that pass through to us do not, and they will not. So our budget will show a slightly higher number, but we will be, if Title 20 is in the federal budget for the next 2 years, that would be 5.8 million that ODHS would pass through to us. And we are still, as a side note, watching the budget conversation at the federal level. We know that in the House, that this Title 20 funding would be cut, as many things would be cut in the current budget under consideration. In the past, that has happened in the House, and then the Senate has restored it. We don't know where it will end up, but we are, of course, paying attention to that. So you can see that the general fund, if everything goes well, general fund would support the Job and Work Readiness Grant and the Youth Violence Reduction Grant, which is just a renaming of our Violence and Gang Prevention Grant, which we've had in previous biennia. And then normally we would use the Title 20 funds for community investments. And if there was a reduction or change to the federal Title 20 funds, then we would of course have to reconsider how we distribute the dollars, the general fund dollars we receive, if that were to come to pass. And again, we're just paying attention, waiting to see what happens at the federal level. The re-engagement funding here, this 9.1 roughly million is other fund that's from the student success. We haven't actually seen the final number yet in the LFO documents that have, LFO's Legislative Fiscal Office. Those documents are what we have to go on in terms of what's sort of below the hood in the budget. I haven't seen a final number, but right now it looks like we would get what was in CSL, which is this 9,059,615. So re-engagement there. The federal grants are our Title II funds that comes from the U.S. Department of Justice. This is just a limitation, which again is not actual dollars. This doesn't mean we have $1.3 million in federal funds. We always have a little bit of extra capacity to spend. This is enough for probably close to 3 different years of federal funding. And we set this up so that if there are delays, as there sometimes have been, we don't always get the federal funds right on schedule. Sometimes they're late to actually be awarded to us. So in reality, I think that we probably end up spending closer to between $800,000 and $1 million over the biennium on these grants and other things that are funded by these grants, such as compliance monitoring and other support for the state advisory group, aka the Youth Development Council. But that's the limitation there. And then community schools, we'll talk about a little bit later on. We have some information on sort of proposed redesign of that very small grant. That's something that we've had in our budget since the council was created, and it's kind of a leftover from our commission system days. And the final line there is the Gresham EMOP money. So it's the Gresham East Metro or East Multnomah Outreach Prevention and Intervention Program. So this was a direct award the legislature had made in a couple of previous budget cycles, and now it is going to be part of our permanent budget. We can share more about that. I think we may get a presentation from them at a future council meeting. But that is a very comprehensive set of funds that the city of Gresham awards to a variety of CBOs and to city projects to essentially do the outreach, prevention, and intervention work to stop youth violence. Not only in Gresham, but throughout East Multnomah County. So their work, as I understand it, is all the way up to 82nd Avenue in Portland now, in collaboration with the city of Portland. So that is a snapshot of the grant and aid budget. We haven't yet seen our operating budget numbers because those are really deeply buried inside of the ODE operating budget. And again, the documents are just coming out, so we haven't had a chance to see it, but we do know that that position is in our operating budget. And we're not expecting any reductions there. So I'd say overall, given what we were bracing for, this is a pretty good outcome right now for our budget for the next biennium. And I'll pass it back to Brian for any other comments, and to, of course, the council if you have any questions.
Felt like that we wanted to give you that info since we just got it. So, Court, I appreciate your kind of walking us through it. We're now behind schedule.
Sorry.
So I'm going to keep us moving forward. Are there any questions or comments from council members, though? And Molly, appreciate your question. Kim, I see you shaking your head. Anything that folks
Right,
need to know?
this is Melissa
Go,
for the
Melissa.
record. Can we have Christina check her microphone because it was off earlier? She just needs a mic check. She might have a question.
Yeah.
Christina, can you check your mic?
Yes, can you hear me now?
We can. Thank you, Christina.
Yay. Great. I just wanted to say thank you for all your work on this. I know it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. Really appreciate, even if we are a little behind, Brian, getting this walkthrough from Cord. So thank you all for your work on this. That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Christina. Yeah, Parsa.
Parsa Chanrami. I also wanted to echo what Christina shared in terms of thanks to Ryan and the team and the governor's office. To see a CSL budget come out, given all of the federal uncertainty and sort of the downward trending revenue forecast we got in May for the June revenue forecast. This is really hopeful news. So to get this at the top of the meeting is, whoo, a sigh of relief. So thank you.
Yeah, that Brian definitely you said it perfectly. We wanted to start with the good news. There's more exciting stuff to share, but this is a big sigh of relief. I think I'll just put an additional point on the table around Cord's note about the federal funding that is tucked into that youth investments line. The Title 20, which is the Social Services Block Grant, which is USHHS related, that then comes to Oregon's DHS, Oregon Department of Human Services, and then is passed on to us. That's a big number, 5.8 million, not in the current budget passed by the House, Senate, see if they make a change, but that would be a reduction. If we don't get those federal funds, then our youth investments amount would go, you can do the math, it's 14.7 mil, it would drop, $5.8 million. So that's a big chunk of money, and we'd have to think about how to, distribute the dollars within those three different kind of grant initiatives. And we faced this uncertainty before, in each biennium, that though it has been funded. So we will be in communication with you in the summer as we learn more. And so just repeating what Court said, but we want to make sure everybody understands that that's something that we're looking at and is at risk. All of you want to have.
So also for the record, just to point out too, and I appreciate Court putting this on the screen. So I'm getting choked up all of a sudden. Sorry about that. That does not affect the current RFA processes that are open. We do this every time with the RFA processes when we launch them before we have our approved budget. So note that that doesn't affect the timelines or anything of that. All of that adjustment is done post that RFA work. And so just want to very clearly point that out, but that'll be decided once we know the actual budget. And Gordon and I, we're not ready to talk about what the plan A, B, and C are, obviously, but it is something we're very aware of and have talked procurement, ODE procurement, and know that is a possibility out there. So just felt it's important to add that to the conversation. That is something we are planning for. Gordon, anything to add to that?
No, thanks, Paul. But I will in the chat. I'll be putting in a note to answer Molly's question about total budget. That'll be coming in the chat just so we don't hold up the meeting time here.
Awesome. All right, gonna move us forward. We wanted to spend a little time in some breakouts. I think with your permission, maybe we can spend like 5 to 7 minutes on that. We don't want to get too far behind, but it seems worthwhile, even if you just want to get up and grab your coffee. Those online, we're going to put you all into one group. And Cord and Tanasia and Bill and there's a bunch of folks that can kind of help facilitate that. I wonder if in the room here, maybe we can like break into 2 or 3 groups. Like maybe there's kind of this group here, whatever, is that 5 of us? 5, and maybe this group like Lawrence, Lamanya, like you 5, and then the 4. We might swap somebody in from Abe for a second.
Okay.
And so Abe and Daniela and Joy and Melissa will probably be making sure everything's happening. So we just want you to you did some of this, but like introduction, we are more interested in just a kind of, you each will get like a minute. Like, what's your expertise? What do you bring to the council? Why did you decide to join? These questions, Melissa, remind me if we'll put them up on screen.
They're on the screen.
Tanisha, thank you.
I'll put the link. There's some prompts. We have some printed out prompts here, and there's a link in the chat.
Afternoon, morning. So on the yellow piece of paper you have, there's a morning breakout prompts. Thank you, Melissa, for having things so organized. And Tanisha, thanks for helping to guide us online. So you can write it down, but it's just quick check-in in a group of 4 or 5. We're going to be fast so that we can keep things moving.
And how fast for the breakout rooms? Because I'm gonna start sending folks away.
Send them away, 5 minutes.
All right, 5 minutes.
Yeah, all right. So Paul and Jeff and Andy, you guys wanna?
And Melissa, you can follow.
Yeah, you wanna?
No way.
Yeah, I'm sending proper.
Are we doing just like, just, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for folks who were able to participate in the breakout sessions. It was great just to be able to check in with one another. And we're going to continue to move us along on the agenda. So I'm going to pass it to Anya and Molly Rogers to give a state advisory group update, as well as a juvenile justice committee update.
They just came back.
Oh, they just came
Yeah,
back.
they didn't hear that first.
Oh, they didn't hear that first part. Okay. I'm happy. I can repeat it back. Okay, perfect. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Parsa Chanrami, welcome back. We are just going to skip the report out just so that we can continue to move along in the agenda. So now we're on to the state advisory group update, as well as the juvenile justice committee update. And so I'm going to be passing it to Anya and Molly.
Thank you very much, Rosa. This is on for the record. This is Anya Sakina, Associate Director of Development Oregon. I will be sharing this opportunity with our fearless Juvenile Justice Committee Chair, Ms. Molly Rogers. You're there. So I put together just a few slides to keep the conversation on track, but for the most part, those who are new to the committee, to the Youth Development Council, and you may or may not, some of you probably know way more than I about the juvenile justice world. But those who are new and those who may use a refresher, who Molly was, is that okay with you? We'll just go very quickly through what goes into juvenile crime prevention plan. So Tanisha, if you don't mind moving the slides. Is Tanisha in charge of the slide? Because I'm giving like instructions.
Yes, Tanisha is piloting our slides today. That's good.
Not the intention. So Molly, and I will let you lead the conversation later, but it's just like going through the slides. So as part of the responsibilities of the Youth Development Council, you have to take an active role along with the Youth Development Division in administration of juvenile crime prevention funding. I mean, the repeat of prevention is intentional because Oregon Youth Authority has 2 other funds associated with juvenile crime prevention, and they're called diversion and basic services, and then they will reference later. But we have juvenile crime prevention funding. And by statute, and the statute's number is right there. So if you would like to read it, it's not really long. It's ORS 417.850. It's pretty much describes what the process with the allocation or review of the plans is on our part. So the statute tells us to work with tribal governments to develop tribal high-risk juvenile crime prevention plans, and those plans are separate from county plan. They have different criteria that go into development of the plans. They have a different review process. So further on in our conversation, we will be looking at those 2 sets of plans separately. And see, that's the thing. I can kind of see the screen there, but I need glasses there, right? And I used to have bifocals, but I need to get prescribed if they don't work anymore. So when the counties work on the development of the plans have to be focused on youth who are at risk of committing juvenile crime or already have committed it. But and then what else there? criteria good, we will get. So once the criteria will have is to measure the change in crime or recidivism if it's likely to be dependent. So we will work with tribal governments with budget and allocation. We'll get to that, and it's like super good news that we already don't have to make the cuts, which because that was a serious concern. And we, as a council, we review the crime prevention plans developed on the different ORS, because that goes into what goes into the plan on a local level. So then they just start to give you instructions. If you don't mind moving the slide. Okay, so I'm gonna go down this small. So the first, this slide is really describes what goes into development of a plan on the local level. So each board of county commissioners, like we have Commissioner Justice in here. Now he would be the person just deciding which agency within the county will take the role of the lead agency. So it's done not by the state. We do not identify who will be the recipient of the monies, who will be putting the plans together. It's a completely local decision done by boards of county commissioners. So traditionally, I should say tradition, over the last probably 10+ years, it's been juvenile departments in majority of cases. It still remains the same. And it looks like we might even have all 36 counties having juvenile departments, and we'll get to it later when we review the plans. Awesome. So what is the target population here? We use the juvenile crime prevention assessment tool, but this one will, based on the assessment by the tool, you have to show at least 2 risk factors associated with antisocial behavior, poor family functioning or poor family support, failure in school, substance abuse problems, and negative peer association. And we used to be referred to programs funded by JCP after shown signs of the at-risk behavior prior to referral. It doesn't have to be law enforcement, it could be schools, it could be families, like whoever is making that referral to the lead agency. And then on our part, we will create guidelines for the planning, and then we will review the plans that will be written and submitted to us based on the guideline. Sorry, if you don't mind going over. So with that, so those are old numbers, because I didn't have the new numbers until court's presentation today. So basically, what we have here was what is happening currently, right? So in 23-25, we had a minimum grant of $70,000, and that went to all 9 tribes and 19 counties. The 19 counties that have smaller numbers of youth population, ages 0 to 17. Now, with the new numbers, like the current one was 6,635,798. So according to the numbers that court shared was it's 6,900,000, 18,000, and 5,000, so forth. So the difference is 278,703 dollars. Yes. So what's going to happen now is we will figure out the allocation numbers per county and per tribe based on the new numbers of dollars received and possibly population change from 2 years to today. Because and I mentioned earlier that the juvenile crime prevention dollars are aligned with juvenile crime prevention basic and diversion dollars. which are administered by Oregon Youth Authority. So just to be consistent, we use the same youth populations number that they use for their allocation. So there's consistency and all of this. And originally the numbers come from Portland State University Census Bureau. So they don't make them up, we don't make them up, but the numbers are consistent across those three funding streams. So the plans were submitted to us and they reviewed by the Juvenile Justice Committee, at which point I was Molly and all other members on the Juvenile Justice Committee to continue. But I'll just say that the reason we have 34 plans is because two counties have some changes. One, Lincoln County used to have school district as a lead agency. That was the only remaining entity that was not juvenile justice. But the school district decided that there are better money to go after hearing a presentation about other youth development Oregon funds. So anyway, so now the county is trying to decide to not repurpose the funds, rename the lead agency, which is going to be juvenile department, but they need to figure out what it is that they want to fund. So we're kind of giving them time to figure it out instead of saying like, give us the plan. Because technically until the agreements are signed, there's still some flexibility there. And the second county is Douglas County. They have a change in leadership and the new director coming in with agreement from the Board of County Commissioners and county administrator, and now it's going to go through lipstick. They want to make some changes instead of subcontracting with an agency. They want to create their own position. Actually, kind of add some responsibilities to the position that already exists. To do the same thing. You have to health counseling and services that exist. So anyway, so those are the two now pending. And I shared with Kim and Molly were reviewing the Douglas County plan. I shared their proposal in the very generic terms with them. And then now it's your turn, Juvenile Justice Committee members. We've come to the Juvenile Justice Committee's recommendations for approval of submitted county JCP plans. Molly, please lead us.
Okay. Thank you. So first and foremost, truly for the YDC to know that you have a very active juvenile justice subcommittee. And I appreciate all of them for giving up extra time. Truly, we're a very active group, and Kim and Christina, and then some partners, Zan, Sam Coe, and partners outside that are kind of not on the council, but participate of Nella Hogberg with Oregon Judicial Department and Annette with System of Care. So everyone chips in and reviewed the plans. Again, there were 34 of them that we were ready to make recommendations on today. And I've been reviewing plans for quite a while, but definitely for the last 3 biennium, the last 6 years. And the outreach and partnership with the county juvenile departments has increased every year. And appreciate the fact that I think in many ways the plans themselves have gotten better and more thorough using data with the help from both Anya and Lawrence White really chipping in and helping counties be accountable for the funds. So we do have recommendations for the board or for the council today, and that is that the 34 juvenile justice plans put forward by the counties, that we move to approve those plans from the YDC and allow the Youth Development Oregon to start the conversations and with counties to be updating their grants. So they've been reviewed at least by one of us, if not by two. And we would seek and ask for a motion for Parasa to entertain a motion from the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee to approve those plans.
Was that a motion? Molly?
Yeah, I guess that it really is a motion, and as the chair of the subcommittee, it probably should be me that makes the motion. So I am going to make the motion to approve the 34 juvenile crime prevention plans as submitted by the counties and approved by your juvenile justice committee.
Zan Oduro will second. So Molly Rogers made the motion and Zan Oduro seconds. Any discussion?
Thanks, yes, for the record, Jeff Parker. Could I just get a quick summary of what is in a plan? Like I just kind of want to make sure I understand what it is, because I think I know, but I'm not sure. And it can be super high level.
Yeah, let me keep it really high level for you. So there's several questions. One is really asking the counties to define the target population that they want to serve. And it has to be within statute. The second, but they can choose to do early offenders or first-time offender, non-offenders. There's some wiggle room in that statute, but they have to identify what part they're going to respond to. Also, really a definition or a description of what the services is intended to do. And then we are subject to House Bill 267, which many people aren't going to know, but that is our evidence-based services and best practices. And so there's a checklist for counties to respond to if it's an evidence-based program or not. And they are able to, not all of them have to do that. You guys, the fire is blowing up again. I have a fire on my street, so just know I'm trying to do the best I can. And then we also talk about cultural and responsivity and cultural appropriateness and how to work with populations that might be overrepresented from a county's perspective in their juvenile justice system. So all counties are different. And so we ask them, and that's where we really have leaned in with Lawrence and Anya for expertise. And then finally, what are the outcomes that they're expecting? And so that's really a high level what goes into a plan. Jeff, did that help?
100%. Thanks. Yeah, I just want to make sure that they were reflective, that they might all be different or slightly different. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
So I am seeing a trend, but really thank you for that. I really, in reviewing them this year, I am really seeing a trend of early intervention rather than prevention. It's really meeting the youth as they have come to the attention of some system. And so I did see that as a new, which is great. It's not a bad thing at all, but I am seeing some synergy around the state in that way.
Melissa, any discussion or questions online from council members?
I'm not seeing any raised hands. If anyone wants to, oh, I see a literal physical raised hand, Christina Mizmina.
As usual, I'm challenged with figuring out on this Zoom version how to raise my hand. Anyway, I just wanted to comment. I think that Molly did an excellent job of summarizing what's in the plan, and that might be after all those years of completing the plans, right, Molly? You've got that lived experience. But the other thing I wanted to say is, as one of the people who reviewed plans, what I really appreciate is the system that the YDO staff have come up with this smart sheet that gives us all this information. And even though I was only assigned to a subset of the plans, I had access to looking at all the plans for the state and seeing what the comments were, which I was really, I had a few different counties assigned to me this time than I'd had the last biennium. So I was interested in seeing what the previous counties had done since, in the last couple of years. And it was really pretty inspiring, some of the great work that's going on around the state. And you might think, oh, Molly and I are the juvenile directors, so that are on this group. So we know what's going on in all of the juvenile departments around the state, but we are always dealing with, it seems like, the crisis du jour or the business of our association when we get together. We don't have a lot of time to all 36 counties share the successes that they're having. And I'm just thinking that might be something we want to spend more time on in the upcoming days, to focus on what's going right instead of just being consumed by what doesn't seem to be going well. So I just wanted to really give a shout out to the YDO staff. Putting that thing together, I'm sure, is a lot of work, but also it reflects the partnership between YDO and the county juvenile departments, the improvement in the question about what are we doing locally to be culturally responsive, to make sure all youth are getting served, to make sure that our staff have the skills and the tools they need to do the work, to really achieve those outcomes that we want. And what we're going for is having young people either not get deeper, more deeply involved in, not get involved in our system at all, or not get more deeply involved, or successfully transition out of our system. And the work that is being done around meeting young people and families where they're at and making sure our staff have those skills has been greatly enhanced by this collaboration from the YDO staff. And I know we always give a big shout out to Lawrence and Anya, but I know other people contribute to it. It has, in my opinion, what I'm seeing now as compared to 5 years ago, it's been a game changer. So I just wanted to share that with everybody who hasn't had a chance to look at the smart sheet. Just know that there's been a lot of thought and work that's gone into making sure that when we review these plans, we actually have the information that we need and we all have access to all the plans, the folks on the Juvenile Justice Committee that are reviewing. So anyway, great leadership from Molly as always. So just wanted to make sure that I put my 2 cents worth in. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Sam's hand. Go ahead, Sam.
Hi, good morning. And I also I don't want to echo like what Molly and Christina said, and had the opportunity to review some of the grants this year, and it varied. Like one county wanted to pay for summer employment, and another county, which I thought was innovative, I think it was Benton County. They said their juvenile department had great services in their urban area, but where they recognized that they needed additional services or help with their rural areas. So they're partnering with a nonprofit, to provide services in more of their rural areas. So those are some of the things that some of the counties, applied for and so forth.
Thank you, Sam. I'm just kind of doing a scan around the room online. Okay, so we have a motion on that. It's been seconded. We just had the discussion, and looking around, looks like no further discussion, no further questions. Melissa, will you call the roll?
Yes, Zan Osher. Aye. Daniela Avila. Aye. Parsa Chanrami.
Aye.
Andrew Copeland.
Aye.
Yoselin De La Garza. Jenny Glass. Alex Johnson.
Aye.
Robin Johnson. Jeff Justison.
Aye.
Sam can't vote. Nathan Latanzio.
Abstain.
Kim Lett.
Aye.
Andy Leonard.
Aye.
Tabidi Lewis. Christina McMahon.
Aye.
Jeff Parker.
Aye.
Savannah Relatos. Molly Rogers.
Aye.
Hannah Schroeder. Janelle Theobald. Is that Janelle?
I think was that Janelle's audio? Oh, there she is.
That's Janelle.
And Hannah, it may have been Hannah. too.
And there's Hannah. Hannah, if you can put your vote in the chat or come off mute and let us know. And Janelle, I think that was an I vote, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
I as well.
And okay, Hannah and Janelle say aye. Phoebe Wilson, and that is not that. Let's see. So, and that passes.
Okay, thank you so much,
Thanks,
Melissa.
everyone.
Thank you to the Juvenile Justice Committee, to the reviewers and the YDO team for helping organize the review of those county plans. I'm just trying to be mindful of time, so we're about 5 minutes into the break, but we have a couple of quick updates on Hill Day and the annual conference report. So do we want to provide a brief update before we take a break? Okay.
If it's a part of the council, yes. Yeah, Anya Sikina, the record. Tanisha, if you don't mind, we will still have tribal plans to like put and discuss. So tribal plans, tribal juvenile crime prevention plans are different from those submitted by the counties. Questions are different, the expectations are different because the statute does not cover like what goes into tribal plans. It's the decision of each individual tribe. So just very briefly, I pulled out some just a few bullet points. So the tribal plans were reviewed by the staff and by MPC Research, which has been a partner for tribes for over 20 years now, right? And the MPC Research also provides technical assistance to the counties as well, and they evaluate every 2 years the outcomes of all JCP programs. And that was actually noted during our presentation that Brian and I did for the legislature, that we have a third party, independent party doing the evaluations, but they also provide technical assistance specifically to the plan. The only person on the council who has seen tribal plans is Andrew. But in general, the fundamental, Andrew, correct me if I'm making mistakes up, please. I'm addressing Andrew Leonard here, because he is also a tribal JCP coordinator for Confederated Tribes of Warm Spring. So culture's prevention is the fundamental principle of all tribal juvenile crime prevention programs. Coordination of tribal prevention services include local schools, education departments. Each tribe has its own education department. Community and social services specific to each of the tribes, and also in the larger communities that kids get involved with, behavioral health and health departments, tribal courts, etc. Just as counties, each tribe decides which tribal agency will be the lead agency for JCP plans. So in most tribes, it would be Health and Human Services type. And there are 2 tribes that have tribal juvenile courts as the administrators, but regardless what the services are and what type of services are being provided, still based on culture as prevention, if you say mantra. So the types of services that tribes are funding with JCP monies is to, well, it's increasing youth engagement in pro-social activities, sports, arts, promote healthy lifestyles, connections with healthy supportive adults and positive peers, assisting elders, participating in community events and after school and weekend alcohol and drug-free activities, just to name a few. The list is larger and it will be specific to each of the tribes. It's each tribe has a separate entity, it's a separate government, a separate history, separate everything. The tribal best practices and cultural activities would include things like prevention and wellness camps, culture classes and camps, canoe journey, round dance, flag legend, and so forth. The tribal best practices is important here to note. Youth Development Oregon was the first state agency to recognize tribal best practices as evidence-based practices. That's what Molly was referring to earlier, because under the state law, all JCP programs must adhere to the principles of the evidence-based practice. So a lot of work was done by the tribes to evaluate and quote unquote translate the existing cultural practices into what fits within the evidence-based practice standards. So be proud of yourself. We were the first to support this. And so yeah, and the last thing is just saying that we've been working with MPC Research for years and years and years. And they've been a true partner and very respected community. You would agree with that or not?
Yeah, I was thinking that on the tribal best practices, I think they just had a meeting on that too. Majority of that prevention, the camps, culture, community family round dances, sweat lodge, each 9 tribes usually have a different thing on each end. That's why it's kind of restricted that way. So each tribe has a different, I guess, culture on every one of those. So, and then a lot of them have to do, been working with youth engagement pretty much. JCP is a big part of schools, working within, getting the kids to school, wondering what's going on, keeping them out of trouble too at the same time. So, where parents are not there and their grandparents are there, but they can't see like 5 different grandkids that are going to school at the same time. So, JCP program I've been since I think 8 years now, 9, 10 years. So every thing with it, I guess each tribe is different. So different situation, more kids. Each tribe has, I know the limit is 5, I think, and then usually get up to 25, 30 kids in one tribe. So it's been helping out a lot. So I've got good responses from each tribe at their tribal quarterly meetings. So it's a good program.
This is Brian. Do we need to, Brian, I'm on youth development, or do we take a vote at this point? Do we need to vote on those tribal plans, or I can't?
It wouldn't hurt.
Do you, so all 9, and so we should vote on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I get a
Is
motion?
it a motion? Is it Parasa? Do we need a motion?
Yes, we do.
I would be honored to move to have the YDC approve the JCP tribal prevention plans.
Molly Rogers made a motion. Can I get a second?
Zan Oshiro.
Okay. Zan Oshiro, seconds. Any discussion? Any discussion or questions online?
I don't see any hands raised or anything with comments on.
Thank you again, Anya and Andy, for the update. It's really great to see the iteration of this work and also reinforcing how important tribal history and indigenous ways of knowing are incorporated into the plans and elevated as evidence-based practices. So thank you for that work. All right, let's go ahead and call the roll.
Great. Zan Oshiro.
Aye.
Daniela Avila.
Aye.
Parsa Chanrami.
Aye.
Andrew Copeland.
Aye.
Yoselin De La Garza. Jenny Glass. Alex Johnson.
Aye.
Robin Johnson. Jeff Justison.
Aye.
Let's see, Nathan Latanzo. Latanzio, sorry about that. Kim Lay.
Aye.
Andy Leonard.
Aye.
Davidi Lewis. Christina McMahon.
Aye.
Jeff Parker.
Aye.
Savannah Relatos. Molly Rogers.
Yes.
Hannah Schroeder.
Aye.
Janelle Theobald.
Aye.
And Kiwi Wilson. And that passes.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Parsa Shannon, I do want to check in. So we have to make a quick choice. Do you want to break now, or do you want to finish a quick update on Juvenile Justice Hill Day and annual project, which should be fairly brief? Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to finish it up? Okay, let's finish it up.
And then we'll.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And
Well, thank you, Parasa. Tanisha, sorry, could you please move the slide? It's just like one slide, honestly, and it's gonna be super quick. But before we get into state advisory update, I really appreciate the kind words that Molly and Christina said about YDD staff working with the JCP plans. I super appreciate the work of the council members who did it. And those juvenile justice committee members who are not technically members of the council, but still put some time to. But what would the amissive who did not appreciate Joy Snyder is here. Who puts together all those, massive spreadsheets or smart sheets. I don't know what they are, but they're just like blankets. Thank you, Joy, for doing it.
Hold on, Joy.
thank you.
Thank you. But her job didn't end there. She also scheduled us a ton of field visits. Huh. So we were able to meet with 6 congressional delegation representative staff. So that was quite a day. So at this point, I would ask Molly and Brian if you would share anything, because the 3 of us went to the Hill and we went to all 6 offices and we broke into the 7th one. If Molly wants to talk.
Are you asking me to take? I can take it from here. So yes, we had a team go back to Coalition of Juvenile Justice, and so Oregon and you have titles. One is Youth Development Council, but you also have a title of what's called a state advisory group. And so realistically, the federal government acknowledges YDC as Oregon's state advisory group that advises us in the JJDPA Act, which is the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act. So we were able to meet back in Washington, D.C. on a really rainy day with 6 staff of our congressional delegation to really talk about the act itself, which has key protections for the for all kids across the federal government. And they really are around sight and sound, so keeping youth and adults incarcerated from being able to visually see or hear each other. Jail removal, so making sure that we're not putting kids in adult jails. Status offenses, so ensuring that we are not putting kids in, incarcerating youth who are simply acting as if their charges are under the age. If they were under the age, if they were 18 or older, they would not be criminal offenses. So minor in possession of alcohol, as well as running away or not attending school. And then we have the core protection of ensuring that we pay attention to racial and ethnic disparities in our data and reducing the disparities. So those are the key core protections in the Act. It was last approved in 2018. And so we were just having conversations with our delegation about the importance of those core competencies, as well as the reason for the reauthorization. Since we were back there, the bill actually has come up and been introduced by Senator Grassley and Senator Whitehouse. And so we'll be doing some outreach to ensure all of our delegation have been really supportive of juvenile justice in the past. And of course, Oregon is supportive of evidence-based practices. And so that's been really critical for us to be able to highlight that. And so we were able to do that back with the delegation. And then we spent 2 days at the coalition and the youth summit. And we had the most amazing piece because we took a youth with us. Alex joined us this year. And we got some kudos from across, just he spoke up. It was great. And we had new members. Andrew also joined us. And so it wasn't just the old gang that kind of went. We had new people that participated. So Anya, I'm not sure if we want to open a space for them to have a little bit of input, because they did, from their perspective, if they want to join in.
Well, it's not up to me, it's up to Madam Chair.
Thank you, Anya. Thank you, Molly. Alex, would you like to share your experience? If you're able to.
Sure, I can share. Alex Johnson, speaking for the record. Yeah, it was a great time. I learned tons. I absolutely learned a lot from, especially from Canada, actually, learning a lot from the peacemaking circles there, from the First Nations and how they do their restorative justice was super enlightening. I didn't know that there was another way to do the justice process other than the, formal court sentencing process. So it was really enlightening to see that there was another way to do it that was much less punitive in nature. It was also really great to talk about the racial and ethnic disparities that are present in the juvenile justice system, and to get to discuss those, especially with, we had the deputy district attorney of Montgomery County in Philadelphia. And she came in and really talked to us about their restorative justice program and how they really reduce their racial and ethnic disparities. And it was really great to hear how they are really preventing their youth from, at least, especially getting frontline bias. One of the things I brought up was how do you prevent your youth who participate in the program, who have to go back to court, who, let's say, who don't finish the program or end up needing to go back to the formal court process? How do you prevent them from participating in the formal restorative justice process from that being an admission of guilt? So it was really great to be able to have that conversation and hear that they do have, stopgaps in place to make sure that participating in that restorative justice process, while it is admitting guilt and saying that, yes, I did do this, it isn't, stepping on yourself or putting yourself in trouble if you do have to go back to court later. So it was really great to hear that there are protections in place for you. So it was all around a really great experience to get to really rally around others and really get to speak around other youth as well.
Thank you so much, Alex and Molly, for sharing your presentation. Andrew, did you want to share as well?
I just real briefly, whatever Alex just said was amazing. I ditto all of that. And I think the other thing that I really valued about that conference was just like the collaboration amongst all the organizations across the United States, and also getting to know the people within our own coalition, right? Just developing relationships and working together, I think is the biggest thing, and making sure we're all going forward in the same direction. So yeah, all of that, it's amazing. Super happy to be a part of this group.
Thank you for sharing. And thank you, Joy, for all of your work in organizing the meetings for Hill Day. Appreciate everyone who was able to participate and go to DC and help advocate for the bill. Lots of work to do. And so with that, I'm going to just check in with Anya. Is there any other final updates?
No, this is up to, I think we're up to this moment.
Okay. Wonderful. So checking the time, we have time for a brief break. And Brian, what do you think about the time for the break?
Yeah, exactly. So we've got one more thing we're going to try to accomplish this morning around the RFA update. We're past the actual time, but I think we'll make up time. We know how to do this. So we could, I'm looking at Melissa too. We've got lunches here.
Right.
Do you mind if I'll just be direct. I would love to get maybe 5 or 10 more minutes to call to talk through some quick RFA updates. Then we can get you up and get your lunches.
Get our break, get our lunches, come back.
And then come back and we'll kind of keep going. So we'll give you like a 10-minute break after Paul's done.
Yep.
That seems fair. I'm looking online.
Hold on.
You're standing between us.
Yes.
Yes, that's how they like it. Yeah, for sure.
Why don't you go ahead and get started?
Jeff is ready.
Yeah. And
thank you. Okay, good.
No worries. Paul Self for the record. Appreciate the time just to give a brief update on our request for application process and community schools grant update. You've seen a little bit about the budget. Again, we are watching that federal piece very closely. I wanted to kind of give a status update in terms of where we're at with our 3 current requests for applications that are open. Just to be clear in terms of the process there, none of us can actually answer any questions about the request for applications, but we can give you the general information around it. So I'll just kind of status update of where we're at. Next slide, please. So just for those that are new to the group, but also just kind of remind us of this process, I believe it was back in December, the YDC approved the RFA process, which includes the release of RFA, which we have done, and we're actually in the application stages right now for all 3 RFAs, which I'll show that in just a moment. We're then going to move into the evaluation, intent to award, and appeal processes that are outlined in the RFA. So I think you've seen rembrances or this slide a couple different ways, a couple different examples, but really just for those that are new to the group, the components of the RFA process, we began almost a year ago with the YDD build out, and that included some continuous improvement areas that we identified early on after the last RFA process. We did a youth grants framework, moved into RFA work groups and the RFA design that our team helped lead that. And so really important to recognize just our grants team in general. Jared, ask you maybe to come on site, maybe talk briefly about the YDD build outs. One of Jared's roles, and it was part of our community, our continuous improvement areas, was to build consistency across all of our RFAs, and Jared led that work. So Jared, I'll hit pause here. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about the process of the build out that we've done.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. Jared Shaw for the record. Yeah, and as Paul mentioned, this process really began in earnest about 6 months ago in December after YDC approved the process, and we really began building out the RFA. But really, this work has been happening over the last year. And so we basically created a common template for the grant managers, the main writers, to go in and insert the information into the RFA templates. And really just sort of facilitating the process of liaising between procurement and the grant managers and the writers, and building out, SurveyMonkey Apply and the question and answers. And there have been a lot of processes that have gone into this. And yeah, it was just a pleasure to be a part of that. And I'll just say, I might have helped facilitate some of it, but really none of it would have been possible without the fantastic grants crew that we have. It's just been a pleasure working with everybody and moving this process along. And we have a terrific team, and everybody just has put their all into this process. So
Appreciate that, Jared. Put it in context, each RFA is approximately 80 pages long. And I will say, I know in confidence, Jared has more than read that 2 or 3 times, I'm assuming, across all of them. So we've done the RFA, or the YDD build out part of that. We are currently in the application stage where applicants are applying in all 3 of the RFAs. And they provide some general applicant information, evaluation criteria. They have letters of support, and well as a proposed budget. So that's all things that our applicants do in terms of that process. Very shortly, in the next week, we are going to be transitioning some of those RFAs into the evaluation process. And that's that piece where I know, well, agonizing, I think, for applicants, because that's when our agency gets really quiet, because there's a lot of things that happen there. And so minimum qualifications for each of those applications are done through ODE procurement. We facilitate evaluator training and assignment. Shameless plug, if you're still interested in evaluating these applications, we have a volunteer evaluator pool from across the state, people that are just interested in supporting youth services and YDO in that process. Currently, we have about 110 folks that have responded to that need. And so we're going to start that process here in the next week. The evaluation process continues through those volunteer evaluators across all the applications, and then the score calculation. Once that is done, and you'll see some timelines here in a few minutes, or just in the next slide, not 2 minutes, sorry, not keeping Jeff from lunch. The award then process happens. That begins with an intent to award after that score calculation has happened. We have a 2-phase ranking process. We do regional ranking and then a statewide ranking. In terms of that, that's all outlined in RFA piece. Then we begin an appeal process. That's a 7-day process where everything kind of halts so that people can complete that process once that intent to award goes out. And then we also are incorporating a new applicant feedback process. We've always provided feedback to applicants, whether they're successful or unsuccessful in the process. But we are making a much clearer process, which I anticipate will be a pretty robust process over the course of the next few months after that intent to award. Any questions about just kind of the RFA process in general? I know we have new folks to this, so I wanted to just take a minute to explain it. It's a pretty lengthy process for us. Again, appreciate the grant staff. This is, as Jared said, not possible without the grant staff doing that work.
Paul, it looks like Zan has.
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
Zan Ojuro, I would say that I have not participated as an evaluator yet for YDC, but I've done it in many other entities. And if you want to get to know the work of this body, this is the opportunity, because you get to read proposals that come from all those folks that are in the field and get a sense for the diversity around the state and the inspirational work they do.
Absolutely. Actually, I appreciate that too. So, thing to add about the evaluation stuff, all of our evaluation stuff is published on our website. So our evaluator training, all of that stuff will be published throughout this process as we do that. Bill and Porter kind of leading the evaluator training on that side. So we're excited to add that element of transparency.
We need that MRSS funding because we're earning it. Jude is barricaded in his bedroom having.
Looking at Melissa, I don't think that was a question for you. I'm answer if it is. All right, so next slide, please. So the big things around that youth grants portfolio that I can't stress enough, re-engagement opportunity grant, we did extend that by a week. There was an addendum that came out this Monday. Yeah, it was this Monday. So that date did get extended by a week to be fair and clear in terms of that process. But the re-engagement opportunity grant closes Monday, June 16th. Job and work readiness closes the following week, and then community investments on July 8th. And just as a reminder, we decided to stagger these on purpose to help not flood our system. We had over 400 applications that we had a single deadline to last go around. That was hard. So we have staggered those, and which that does mean then that intent to award date had to be shifted back, which is we recognize the impact that has on it, but then we have approximate intent to award is when folks are notified whether they were successful or unsuccessful in that process within that. And you might notice, and I think Cord noted this, we're still working on the youth violence and gang reduction name. So you've seen that, but in the budget, I think it was called youth violence reduction. So that'll be more information coming fall 2025 within that. And so you'll have, I'm assuming, an update in September regarding that. Any questions about the RFA process? Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. Jeff Parker for the record. Real quickly, will grantees that do get an award or an intent to award, will they be able to incur expenses all the way back to July 1? Or for organizations that have ongoing grants, will there be a pause in services?
So the short answer is yes, you can claim expenses back to that July 1 date. If the new caveat is you have to demonstrate that you have insurance during that interim. So, and that is a new piece that is, my understanding is statewide out of Department of Administrative Services, that as long as you have that demonstrated insurance, you're able to reimburse back to it. But the reimbursement date is dependent on that when that insurance is issued. So great question. Oh, thanks, Cord. Yeah, and Cord, thanks for that reminder. All of the Q&A and all the questions within that is really important to do it. I will note that that's a question that we can answer because it is answered within that. So I just jumped right into it.
I wasn't trying to say it.
No, I felt comfortable answering. All right. So I'm going to jump to the other update that I was asked to do. So we go to the next slide, and it's around our community schools grant fund. This is a fund, folks that were here the last biennium. We had conversation with the council around what does that look like? And the community schools grant fund is a legacy grant fund of approximately 125. And there were some different numbers within it. It's $115,000 to $125,000 by each biennium. And we have traditionally awarded that to 5 legacy grant recipients for each biennium that I've been here. And it was well before that as well, is what my understanding is. But and so we have continued to issue that out there. The YDC does have oversight on how these funds can be awarded and distributed. And really, when we look at the OARs or the Oregon Provide statutes or the Oregon administrative rules, that falls under the kind of the umbrella of the YDC in terms of making some decisions around that. So there's not anything specific, such as like with re-engagement, that outlines it. That's where the YDC has oversight within those funds. And so over the past month and a half, I have met with each of those 5 legacy grant recipients or communicated with them that I was bringing this information to the council today based on the conversation we had the last biennium with it, but we might want to take a look at it as a council within that. So some proposed next steps with those is that we do we do hit pause before we issue the 25-27 community schools grant award to allow time for the YDC and the YDD to review and align these funds with our updated strategic plan. And so that's my recommendation for us as a group. And how we would do that is I am recommending that we assign it to a YDC committee to do the next steps around that and the use of those funds for the 25-27 biennium. We have that flexibility to do that. I see hands raised, so And these are questions I can answer.
Danielle Avila for the record. I am curious how your alignment is with ODE and they have a very big intentional effort to move this work forward. I just got back from the National Conference for Community Schools. So where is that conversation at?
So the funds haven't really been in alignment. I think originally back in the legacy piece, and I would look to the folks that know more about this for sure to answer that. And so these have been very kind of standalone funds within the agency at this point.
Okay.
But I want to turn into the more.
Yeah, I'll Brian Devon, YDO director. Yeah, the 21st Century Schools effort, for example, on the national level, and community schools more generally, something that has existed. And to Paul's point, I think probably a decade ago or more, there was some desire to align and expand, and then the funds just weren't there. So I think that the schools and the school districts have some opportunity to kind of pursue those federal funds. I'm just gonna, because I know we don't have a ton of time, kind of cut to the chase. I think something that is in our strategic plan that I think very interested in doing here at the second bullet, right, is saying, hey, it's not a ton of money, but this is a real opportunity for us to assign these dollars to our youth committee to be able to make some decisions about what kinds of things they want to support. That's an idea that's in our strategic plan, been there and suggested over the last even in the last strategic plan, like as something to think about. So that's the idea. We probably need to do some deeper thinking and get into the details of what that looks like. But that's, I think, the opportunity before us. These were $25,000 grants up to this point, so they're not huge dollars.
Yep.
And thanks to Paul and grant managers, Bill's been involved too in this work in the past. We think we have the opportunity to kind of take this not huge amount of money, but to think about it and have it really connected to some of the work that is in our plan, and know that there are some federal funding opportunities. I don't, for bigger dollars perhaps. And so that's, I guess, how I answer that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Sam has a question.
Sam?
Thank you. So when I see like legacy grant recipients, those five get it every biennium. They don't have to compete for it, or it's like the grant is not open to other school districts or ESDs to apply for this grant. And I know it's only 25,000. I know.
No, and so Sam, I appreciate that. So in the past, since I can only say for the last 3 bienniums, because that's my length of time at YDC, as well as our records retention and that kind of stuff. But for the last 3 bienniums, yes, they have been automatically awarded to these 5 legacy grant recipients. Within that, I have met with them and communicated with them that we were pausing this and bringing it forward, directing them towards our competitive grant process on that piece. Even one of them, when I was meeting with them, well, you told us the last 3 years that this could happen. So it wasn't a surprise. Obviously, this is a piece that impacts it. These are some amazing programs that happen with $20,000. Like, they are heartwarming programs. So I want to recognize the quality of work that happens within that. But again, working to realign it with more of our strategic plan felt important to do that. I don't believe there's anything that has to be voted on within it. I'm looking to Brian and Marissa on that because these are some funds that the YDC can to do. So there will be some work within that element. I don't know, questions?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an interesting question. I mean, we could say it's just like, again, for those who were in our strategic planning session in the fall, we had a retreat, the newer folks weren't there, but maybe we could you could ask for a motion to formally do this thing that the last bullet says. That might just make it clear and solidified. So, but I think Paul's point is, we have the power to just move forward. We don't actually, there's not something statutorily at risk if we don't formally vote. So I don't know, the chair or council, if you have thoughts about how to proceed. Yeah.
Senators were speaking, just in terms of transparency and for the record, it would be logical to. I have to make one that propose that we assign the community school grants fund question to a YDC committee to determine the next steps in the use of these funds for the 25-27 biennium in accordance with our to be approved strategic plan.
Thank you, Zan. Do we have a second? Jeff seconds. And any discussion? Anyone online?
I don't see anyone online.
All right, seeing none.
Clarifying question.
Oh,
Do we want to assign it to the committee or does that go to the chair?
The chair
that's a good question.
has the power to create work groups and committees. So yes, you have the power to decide. But I was clear, I think, that in our plan, the logical place is to the youth.
I will amend my motion to indicate that from our referring to the committee of the development council.
Okay, amended motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second the amendment.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate the clarity.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for transparency and for the record, right? Any discussion? Anyone online, Melissa?
Nope, no discussion online.
Okay, seeing no additional discussion, Melissa, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Zan Ogerow,
Aye.
Daniela Avila,
Aye.
Parsa Chandrami,
Aye.
Andrew Copeland,
Aye.
Yoselin De La Garza, Jenny Glass, Alex Johnson,
Aye.
Robin Johnson, Jeff Justison,
Aye.
Nathan Latanzio,
Aye.
Kim Lay,
Aye.
Andy Leonard,
Aye.
Tabidi Lewis, Christina McMahon,
Aye.
Jeff Parker,
Aye.
Savannah Relatos, Molly Rogers,
Aye.
Hannah Schroeder,
Aye.
Janelle Theobald. Still here.
Maybe in the chat.
Or maybe in the chat. Janelle might have had to go. I will double check this if she's
Still here. I vote aye.
Thank you, Janelle. Kiwi Wilson. That passed as well.
Thank you, Melissa. All right. I'm just checking on the agenda because I looked it up a couple times. Okay, so right now we're taking a little break.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't we break for lunch for get your lunch, give you 15 minutes to get situated, check your email, go to the bathroom, whatever needs to happen, and we'll try to bring us back together about 12:15.
12:10.
12:10. Well, say 12:15. Give them a chance to breathe. Yeah.
So we'll recess until 12:15.
We'll start, we'll say something at 12:15.
Okay.
Well done.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully everyone was able to were able to take a quick break and have lunch. Please continue eating and everything. We are calling the meeting back to order at 12:17 p.m. on June 12th. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Cord Bucher for an update, providing a data recap. Go ahead, Cord.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. For the record, Cord Bucher. I will try to keep this very brief because I know we're a little behind and want to get into further topics. Last council meeting, we had a full data presentation on year one of our community investment and re-engagement grants that was rudely interrupted by a power outage. And I think we also were short on time as it stood. So for folks who were there, one, we wanted to acknowledge that, that didn't go quite the way we had hoped. Melissa, if you would, we're going to, in the chat, we'll drop links to there are two one-pagers that our team, so Bill Hansel did the work on our community investment data. Molly Burns did work on our re-engagement data, and each of them created a one-pager that's been posted at, as a meeting resource for the last meeting, and that's on our website. We'll put those links in the chat. So they're popping up now. The actual full presentation was in the slide deck for the last meeting, which is also on the website, and we'll also post a link there. I know some folks, particularly new folks, may not have gotten to see that presentation. So a couple of things. I mean, one is for those who did see it, and maybe if you've had any questions about it, or if there's any just discussion that we didn't have time for, we wanted to just open the floor back up just for any thoughts, reflections on that, from the last meeting, since it kind of got cut short. So I'll pause for a second and just see if anybody did that was able to participate in that conversation, wanted to come back to anything, or had any questions for Bill or Molly.
Thank you, Cord. I'm just doing a scan around the room. Any questions on the data presentation from our last meeting? Okay, Brian?
Sorry. Brian Detman with food in my mouth. I do know that, and Ford's probably, sorry, going to say this, but Tabidi, who we hope may join us midday here, he had some stuff that he's our vice chair that kept him out of this morning's part, but I think the general sense in our last meeting was a desire to kind of keep the conversation going. So, and where may it happen. So we're gonna shortly do some breakout conversations around kind of three broad topic areas. And so I think the sort of vision is that data presentations will continue in like committees and work groups going forward. Juvenile Justice Committee talks a fair amount around data when they're getting community, county, and tribal plans, and then NPC research brings their data to them. And so we both want to see those committees and work groups continuing to have deeper dives on data, and we'll bring presentations to you on an annual basis, and perhaps even at our coming retreat in November to kind of dive deep. So there's good opportunity for ongoing conversation.
Thanks for that additional context,
Yeah.
Brian. Any other questions for Cord or comment for Cord? All right, keep going. I don't see any other hands here. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll just again acknowledge that that Molly and Bill did great work. It looks like someone had trouble accessing our links. I know sometimes the links can be tricky, but I think we can, per the request, send these one-pagers out and make sure we have a link to the full council meeting presentation that works. But as Brian said, I think what we want to figure out is how to. We've generally come to the council annually and done a big presentation on, essentially looking at a year of our program data. We also get an evaluation from NPC Research on the JCP programs, the juvenile crime prevention. Data is analyzed and evaluated by NPC independently, and that's great data on the impact of those programs. So there are already some ways that we're bringing this to the council, but something that is, as Brian said, we think is important is to find more ways to integrate this, to infuse this into the committee work. And just to make sure that we're creating space and with the council to talk about this. I think one other quick thing I'll note is that right now we're in our RFA period, and one of the things that we're implementing is increased data requirements around our community investment grants to really bring all of our competitive grants to the same level of what we've collected for re-engagement, where we're actually collecting individual level data on the youth who are being served. And in re-engagement, by doing that, we've been able to really identify some powerful trends, looking at both like things like reasons for disconnection and what's working in re-engaging youth, as well as just even understanding like where those youth are coming from, who's coming from being completely disconnected from school, who's being referred, et cetera. So we've, re-engagement, we've had a lot of exciting stuff, that we've been able to learn through collecting more robust data, and we want to be able to do that in community investments. And I think that, as we learned from this legislative session, that's something that the legislature really wants to see is when these investments are being made, especially during times where funding could be impacted by by revenue shortfalls, et cetera. Being able to show why your grants are really valuable, showing the impact, showing that it's really reaching youth and doing something good is we want to be able to do that more effectively and with more efficiency. One of our challenges is just our data collection. We don't have a lot of infrastructure, and so we're really working on how we can better develop our processes so that we can bring this to the council and share it. So it's definitely on our agenda as we get into the strategic plan conversation. There's a whole strategy focused just on our work around improving data and reporting. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to. And I think, Brian, I can pass it back to you if we want to transition into that conversation about strategic planning.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Court.
Nice to meet you.
Brian Detman again for the record. Director, so yes, we're gonna keep you moving here. We had planned to do this quick intro and overview before we broke for lunch, so we're gonna try to catch up a little bit here. Maybe Corey and I can do a quick overview of the plan and get you as soon as we can into some breakout conversations. So we'll maybe be speaking pretty quickly here. We also wanted to move at the end of this conversation around 1:30 to vote to adopt. And so I know we had some council members, who needed to sign off, and maybe we'll come back. So we'll see if we have quorum around 1:30, but I'm just going to say out loud that for those folks who are signing back on, and I know Melissa's and Tanasia online too, we're probably looking closely at kind of where we have in terms of folks both in the room and online. So around 1:30, we're hoping to 1:25 or ish get to making one final motion for today, and then moving towards the end of the meeting. If we can't do it, we'll figure out maybe how to do that online or something. So just be thinking about that. And for those in the room, there were handouts. One is just a draft plan with the colorful chart on the front, and then there's a 2-page summary that's black and white with a blue Youth Development Oregon logo on the right. So if you didn't get the handout, there's some here in the room behind. But now would be a good time. I want everybody to have, and I think electronically for those online, there's maybe, I don't know if we can drop in the chat or we can figure out how to get it to folks electronically. And you were sent this last Friday, if I'm not mistaken, by Melissa in your email. So ideally you have the strategic plan in hand. Just as a reminder for newer folks, well, not as a reminder for folks generally, but for our newer council members, we have been working on this for the past, I don't know, I'd say it, maybe it's been a year-ish, but the key milestone was in November of last year, we had a retreat where we kind of tried to take a lot of ideas that folks had come up with and from some staff conversation and from just our past plan, like things that weren't completed, and put them into this new draft plan. And again, had a really great group of folks come together at the Marion County Juvenile Department for a retreat session. Many of you were there for both days, some for one day or first day or second day, based on your own schedules. But this documentation represents the culmination of that retreat work and work done prior. So really appreciate everybody's input. One thing that I'll say is I hope to bring this to this council in March as more of a conversation and deep dive, but we just had too much on the agenda. So we had to make some hard decisions and wanted to get our RFA, request for application, work moving, and the plan has, took.
The power went out.
Yeah, and then the power went out in that meeting, so it's probably that, yeah. So we didn't get to covering this in March, mainly because we took it off the agenda so we could leave time for some of the other items. But I realize and have had some input from other council members, and I just want to acknowledge, perhaps here, both in the room and online, we've got some really great thinking that's gone into this, but I think now is an opportunity for us to take on, and I'd like to ask and invite the council to take on some more ownership of the plan. And realize that by not having it front and center for you, at least in our last meeting, that's been a bit delayed. So we have dedicated some time today to actually encourage you to go into, we'll have one group in here, and one group, and then Jeff and the Northwest Youth Corps folks have given us a couple of other spaces to give you an opportunity to kind of have some conversation about the plan itself. Maybe this is your first time looking at it. And maybe even in those small groups, you want to spend 5 minutes just looking over the handouts or looking at things electronically. This is one opportunity among others that I think will exist for us to kind of take on this information. And again, we sent it to you electronically. So that's just a little bit of kind of context and background. I want to make sure that you understand that the data pieces are, we've got some specific ideas about that, as Court just said, that kind of equity and transparency is one of the kind of key imperatives of the plan. So you see that, and that's from input that we've heard from council members and other partners. We're going to ask you to split into 3 groups, and so you're going to need to pick one around juvenile justice, one around youth engagement and youth voice, and one about just kind of broader strategy. Maybe Cord, you might say more about those 3 groups, because I know you're going to give a bit of an overview of the structure and the plan and kind of the breakout conversations. We've got prompts that you'll see here shortly. They're also on the yellow sheet that's a handout. But this is our opportunity to have some deeper conversation, begin to move this into like both adoption and then implementation. And the last thing I'll say quickly, and again, I'm probably repeating some things that Cory said, like a lot of things have been happening within this plan. You're going to see things on here that are either in progress or may have been accomplished. A lot of the RFA updates and changes were things that we've talked about for the last couple of years. So we're moving on those things. So this is a live and going plan, right? We haven't just stopped all things. We've kept the big picture work happening. We had a great youth engagement meeting with 7 faces gathered online, 7 people, and it was really powerful. And Maricela joined that meeting yesterday, right? Our outgoing chair. So there's movement happening, and we'd like you to dive in with us this afternoon and make some choice about where you're going to go. And just because you go someplace doesn't mean you can't get involved in another space after the fact. But that's my quick overview. Corey, do you want to kind of do quick structure and then we can get to actual breakouts?
Sure. Yeah. So, as Brian mentioned, one of the things that we've been thinking about is how implementation of the plan connects with the work of council committees. One of the things that felt like a good move to just really maintain like the stewardship of the plan and where that can kind of live in the council is to really dedicate one committee to that purpose. So in the past, we had a policy, rules, and research committee. And Brian, forgive me, I don't know where we're at on sort of the officialness of committee changes. I know that is something that you've been talking with the chair about. But I believe that you might think of the policy, rules, and research committee as becoming what we're calling the strategy committee, and really making that one of the primary roles of that committee, maintaining the work of the strategic plan, which is not to say that the other committees don't have very important roles as well. So, it makes sense to, I think, have one committee that's just the place where like that is a focus of the work. But in the Juvenile Justice Committee, obviously there are some very big important things in the plan that committee will be focused on. The same is also true for the youth committee. In the plan, there are 8 strategies, and those are maybe just like the high level 8 big bodies of work or clusters of projects. And one of the things that I think, there are some questions to kind of prompt the conversation in the breakout groups. And one of the things that we hope to do is, think about in these three committees, which one you're most interested in. That is not to say it is the only committee you can participate in or anything like that. But the hope is that in these conversations, you might think about what strategies or what projects feel like the things that for this committee, we really want to dig in on. And the hope is that as we move forward over the next few years implementing the plan, that in every committee there's work happening, and then it's really the charge of this strategy committee to continuously update the full council on progress, to work with the other committees to track any input we get, any progress and implementation, et cetera. One other thing I'll say is that in the plan, in the full plan, there's a section that talks about the fact that we really hope for this to be a living plan. I mean, one of the challenges with a strategic plan, especially for us, is it took a long time to put this together. And then we're doing this work over a fairly long period of time when a lot of things can happen. New needs emerge, new ideas, new opportunities, legislation. And so we want to make sure that something we're always tracking is how council, the community, grantees, how we get feedback on how this is working, what impact it's having, what we may have missed. And to really have a process for doing that, it seems like having a committee to hold space for those kinds of, the dynamic plan where we might get input, things might become less important, new important things might emerge, and how do we handle that? Feels like important work, so we don't end up with an extra 70 projects over the course of the 3 years, but also that we have the ability to adapt and to say, hey, like this has become a priority. This is very important. Or here's an opportunity, coming out of legislation. We really need to make sure we dedicate energy to this. So it's both, I think this is an ambitious plan. There's a lot of different stuff in it. I think folks hopefully will find things that they really are excited about. I'll drop the prompts. They'll be on the slide that we can we can put up while we get into the groups, and I can also drop them in the chat. These are not the only questions you might ask, but the hope here is just for you to kind of get a sense of the plan. Hopefully, also like in conversation with the others in the group, how this feels like it would fit the work of, a strategy committee, the juvenile justice committee, the youth committee, et cetera. I think that kind of covers it. Here are some of the prompts. Again, you might have other thoughts. And then when we come back from the breakouts, we'll ask that each of the groups, pick someone who can just provide a quick summary of what you've discussed and any big takeaways.
Thank you, Cord. Yeah, the prompts are on the screen. You have a yellow piece of paper with, I think, the prompts and space in which you can determine someone to do some writing and take some notes. We're going to have staff that find their way to the different groups, so we'll be there to kind of help answer a question or help just facilitate as needed. One of the things I'll say quickly, on the back of the summary page, you've got priority projects. To be clear, those are projects that were chosen in the November retreat as places to start. But they are not, the priority doesn't mean like they're necessarily the most important or strategic thing, but they seem like the good places to start. So just understand that context around these were things that were identified in that retreat. We could you could refine this, but again, those assembled were like, yeah, this is a good place to start, and so that's, I think, important context for folks to know. I'm going to shut my mouth. Thank you, Cord. Any questions? Okay. Anything? Tanisha, thanks for getting the slide up. Oh. There's my voice. Oh, good. And again, staff are going to go around. We're going to bring our laptops so we can bring people who are online into each of the. We'll bring people with us virtually. All right. So the thing you will need to do for those here in the room is decide which group to go with. Or Melissa, do we determine where? Do I get to just choose which room, which group stays here?
I think I was kind of hoping strategy could stay here because I'm in that group, and that would be great if I could stay
Okay, so
here.
strategy group slash, this is the beginning of a like, oh, this is a committee that I also might be interested. So strategy group's gonna stay here. Melissa will be with that group. Board will be here. That's a place where we're gonna talk about like plan, implementation, and data, and policy, and just like catch all, like a bunch of different things. Juvenile justice will go where? What's the other? Joy.
My Mackenzie conference room.
Follow Joy. You'll bring your laptop. Anya will go that way too, my guess. Lawrence, you're also gonna stay here in this group, in the strategy group.
Yes.
Cause yeah, we've tried to split some folks up. Thank you, Lawrence. Then we're gonna have a youth breakout, youth voice, youth engagement. So it's not just for youth or young adults. But those interested in like youth engagement, youth voice, talking more about that grant opportunity a little bit, because that's one of the pieces of that came out of our retreat that's in the plan. Paul is gonna be in that group, and Abe, if I'm not mistaken. And so you will follow one or both of them to.
Oh, Jeff's leading us.
Well, Jeff follow.
No, not
Jeff.
leading the group,
Yes.
but he's gonna show me where we're going.
Follow Jeff. So if you want to be a part of the youth engagement, youth voice piece, and as a kind of leaning maybe as a, how can I support and be a part of youth committee? That's where you should go. Go parcel.
And then what time do you want folks to?
Yeah, so
Thank
we're,
you, Parsa.
yes. We're gonna ask, what's the agenda?
So it sounds like we have about 35 minutes. First, right? And then we do a council vote.
Yeah, 1:15. So that gives, what is that, 35 minutes? So you need to be back here in the room, please, at 1:15.
Perfect.
So it's 12:41 or something right now. For those online, we will reconvene and we will ask each of the groups to determine somebody to give a short report out. And hopefully if we have quorum, we'll do some vote on the plan, answer questions, and then move on.
Are we dividing?
Yeah, folks online, and Melissa, do you want to say how you created the groups and how
You
people can
should
join?
be, once I open the rooms, you should have an option on your screen to choose which room you go in. If not, just put in the chat and I can assign you which room you'd like to go to. So they're youth, strategy, or juvenile justice.
Awesome.
And what then?
1:15.
So Brian, sorry, so we're back in here at 1:15 and then we'll do report outs, and that's enough time for that? Okay.
What we got?
Okay.
So if you're not in this room, we're gonna move north.
Yeah, take that with you. Which group are you going to?
Both groups.
Juvenile,
Yeah.
okay. All right, good afternoon for the record. Oh, there's a little bit of a audio.
We had an echo. Try again.
Is your
I'm muted on my screen and on my, okay, there, different mute.
Okay.
See.
Ward, can you hear us?
In part-time person.
Oh, someone, okay, wonderful. Okay,
Sorry.
Audio's good online.
okay, wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, Parsa Chanmami calling the meeting back to order. It is 1:18. Welcome back. I really appreciate folks being able to participate in the different breakout groups. We're going to give each group 2 minutes to report out some highlights from their group. And I wanted to see if we had any volunteers, and our goal is to have our vote on the strategic plan by 1:30, just so that we're able to reach quorum. So is there a group that wants to get started first? Juvenile justice. Strategic
Uh,
planning? Okay, perfect.
Oh, no. But, no, that's you.
Nate Latanzio, council member, reporting for the youth council, subcommittee group. There we go, yeah, the breakout group that we were in. Yeah, I'll probably get us started off and then lean on fellow folks of that group to share, but really the focus of the conversation when we were in there were on strategies. Well, I'd say on strategies 1 and 6, with the understanding to an acknowledgement that like all of these strategies and priorities really like interface with each other, so they're all important. And within like I know something I was noting is that for 1 and 6, I mean like it being the youth development council, like hearing from young people is going to be a really like foundational piece of all of this, and what's going to be driving a lot of these other strategies and priorities. Let me see. So one of the pieces that we were talking about that we had probably the most conversation on was priority 37 of strategy 6, which is establish informal youth conversation series led by the youth committee involving grantee participants. So we're just talking about like existing spaces in which young people are sharing their voice, ultimately like doing, if we create a conversation series like this, like, okay, how would we want this to look? Ultimately, what's the underlying like need? Like, what are we trying to hear from young people and making it relevant for them so they do want to engage and come to that space? And recognizing, yeah, there are other spaces. I think I noted this a second ago, but there are other spaces that are hearing from young people, system of care, local and statewide, among many others. So thinking of how we could like involve the young people within those spaces to come support, while also recognizing that's not going to be the most all-encompassing way of hearing from young people, because there's a lot of young people that aren't involved in those systems at the same time. So just thinking of multiple pathways to be able to hear from young people, with the funding that we got through the motion, that's going to be helpful in terms of like, okay, how do we want to flush out the strategies of what this all looks like? But I'll pause there because I think I'm running out of pertinent pieces. Anything that I missed?
The only thing that this just came to me, I want to make sure that as we do kind of a needs assessment, what assets do we have where youth are already at the table? And are the youth furthest from opportunity, like juvenile justice, right? Other programs like that, are they at the table? Do they have a space where their voices are being elevated? Because I want to make sure that those are coming.
Thank you so much, Nate and Daniela, for sharing an update from the youth committee. Would anyone from juvenile justice like to go?
Sure. Jeff Justison, YDC member. I'll echo, we talked a little bit about our strategy 6 project, priority project 38, getting the youth more involved. They talked about that really well, so we'll just piggyback on that. But a couple of things. One is we focused on strategy 5 because that's mostly around juvenile justice. And one of the questions was, does the priority project still seem like they're good first steps? And the consensus was kind of, yeah, because those are mandates, so we have to do them anyway. So, but one of the things that came up, a couple of things. One is strategy 3, priority project 13 talked about, I was going to read it, but it talked about creating the impact briefs, and in the full thing, it talked about so we can let legislators know. But it's really not just legislators, it's letting even system leaders, because it sounds like in a lot of things we talked about, people that should know what YDO is doing don't know. And so it's figuring out how to engage and inform everyone, not just legislators, about YDO's work, because there's some great things and they're doing a lot of impactful things, but a lot of people just don't know. And then there's just a couple of wording things in a couple of the others that might be better. I don't know if it'll potentially hold up a vote on it today, but on strategy 5, project 29, it talked about the youth detention guidelines, I believe. Sorry, I'm all over the place here, but it's more than just a sentence of completing and implementing the training on the new detention guidelines. There's a lot more work that were put into them, and I realize the strategy plan, but It's not just a translation of the statutes, and figuring out a way within those how to give youth and families more of a voice. So sorry, that's kind of all over the place, but those are the main things that we talked about.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else from Juvenile Justice Committee like to share?
I just want to add, and Alex, are you there? I cannot see you. So that was about strategy number 6. It P 38.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, could you stand them up, please? You had a great suggestion.
Oh, you wanted me to speak to what I said?
Mine, because it was really important.
But yeah, I just was saying how I really liked the part about bringing in more youth-led voices because I think it's really important to bring in more youth because peer support is really underutilized, and I think that peers are one of our biggest tools that we can use to impact juveniles, especially juvenile justice. Because as someone who is still fairly young myself, like I said, I'm more likely to listen to someone closer in age to me than someone who's much older than me. So that same logic probably applies to someone who's a teen or is a preteen who probably doesn't want to listen to adults. So peers are usually a really impactful way to get access to these youth and to make an impact. So I think it's really important that we are bringing in more youth and really championing youth.
Thank you so much, Alex, for adding that. Just seeing if anyone else from Juvenile Justice. Okay, I think we're the last group. Dan and I were, and as well as a number of YDO staff. We had a couple of guests as well. We're in the sort of planning and strategy committee, and what was shared before us, we have also touched on as well, thinking about representation on the council and supporting youth leaders in participation on the council, as well as different committee opportunities. When it came to elevating the work of the council, we had also mentioned thinking about how do we tell both the quantitative and qualitative stories. And knowing that there's a lot of synergy and intersections with different strategies and projects. For example, thinking about how do we leverage the convenings for grantees and community partners in that storytelling work, right? And then how might that inform our annual or biennial report from YDO to not only describe our work that breaks it down for multiple audiences, how might that inform our advocacy work? Right? How does that inform our policy work? How does that help with new council member orientation as well? To again, be able to elevate it, reinforce, protect the work as we move forward. We had also talked about how do we support collaboration across the different youth serving agencies and partners. And there's a lot of good work underway. And so some of the things we talked about is how do we continue to elevate that in a time where there's a lot of federal uncertainty. We had also talked about budget scarcity and in times where resources are scarce, how do we connect and strengthen those partnerships and support one another and work and have collective work around youth that we're very clear and explicit and unapologetic about. I'm trying to think, is there anything else I missed, Sam, that you might want to elevate?
I think that I just want to echo a little bit of what you said. That's a great summary. But in terms of the strategies that others mentioned, the ones that we brought up that hadn't been mentioned yet were 7 and 8. And under 7, it was really developing mission-based research questions that we do key performance indicators that can be used in those either impact groups or biennial reports. And when we thought about what would be most impactful in the near term, maybe biennial report can go to not just legislators, but to the system leaders, as Jeff mentioned, and other partners to grantees, so that just raises the livelihood profile until starts that storytelling. And also to maybe highlight some of those grantees that are doing exceptional work and those grantee convenings where we can invite legislators and others and just do more showing off the positive work that's being done. And to echo what Carissa was saying, and we took a little bit of a negative turn in our conversation in terms of the federal resources and federal policy shifts, and we're talking about the need for alignment across state entities they're youth serving and across the entire community in order to make sure that we still have the resources and the vision to actually support families, communities, and youth. So then I asked the one question about how the work to eliminate equity, diversity, and inclusion work is landing. And Lawrence was saying that because of the fact that we focus more on racial and ethnic disparity, and we don't use the words diversity and equity and inclusion, that so far so good, and that but that also it's yet to be seen, and that DHS is fighting that battle. We'll kind of find out what goes out.
Thank you so much, Stan. One other thing that we had discussed was how do we ensure that the strategic plan isn't a one-off thing that sits on a shelf, that it is actually a living document, that we're being really explicit about how it ties into our work. And so like low-hanging fruit that we were thinking about was perhaps there's ways to explicitly note where, in a council member meeting of the council, perhaps what we're discussing, how does it tie to our strategic planning work? And then just being really explicit about that, so that when staff are talking about that work, how we as council members talk about that work, knowing how all these puzzle pieces fit together as well. So, and I think that's our update. And now, I just want to check in about process. Now, is it any discussion before we take a vote?
Yeah,
And then
maybe I'll
check
say,
in on
I
time.
know where time is, because I know Zan's gotta get going. And I don't even know where we are most in terms of forum opportunity, but our hope was to get, and maybe Janesh, you can move us forward, and Court, you can weigh in, to a motion to essentially adopt the plan. There are words we can shift and change. I hear that, like, we can massage, but the hopefully, and my hope is that the structure, the outline, we've got some high level imperatives, we've got a set of strategies, we got some priorities that we must focus on because they're statutory, and or some things that a group that came together last fall came up with. We could refine the priority projects within committees, I think, to say, actually, we want to do these three and these two. I hope, I think, and I just appreciate your input and your conversation. We can offer more opportunity for you all to engage with the plan, because I think that is necessary. Like, you need time, and you need time together to do that. But my hope is some kind of motion to say the broad strokes of this are sensible, and we can have an adopted plan, but that doesn't mean we won't continue to refine it. It will be living and breathing.
Yep.
But again, Melissa, I'm looking at you to say, what do we have in terms of numbers?
I mean, I can't tell at a glance, we'll just have to tell when I take the vote, and then we'll know what votes we have.
All right. Can we get a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Do I say? I'll make a motion to adopt the strategic plan.
Thank you, Nate. Can I get a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Sam, thank you for seconding. All right, any discussion? Anyone online? Anyone online? Okay, Melissa, will you call the roll?
Yes. Zan Oshru?
Aye.
Daniela Avila.
Aye.
Parsa Chanrami.
Aye.
Andrew Copeland. Yosela de la Garza. Jenny Glass. Alex Johnson. Wait, is Alex still there?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Robin Johnson. Jeff Justison.
Aye.
Nathan Latanzio.
Aye.
Kim Lay. Andy Leonard.
Aye.
Tabidi Lewis. Christina McMahon.
Aye.
Jeff Parker.
Aye.
Savannah Relatos. Molly Rogers.
Okay, I'm actually going to abstain if it doesn't, if it doesn't impact the quorum.
Hannah Schroeder.
Aye.
Janelle Theobald. Kiwi Wilson.
We need Molly's vote.
We need Molly's vote.
Sorry, we do.
Yep, we have 10 ayes.
Okay, so I will vote in the affirmative. I will vote in the affirmative.
And it passes with 11 votes.
Thank you, Melissa. All right.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you. Zan's gonna, bye, Zan.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you,
Sam.
Steve Powell.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
All right, next we move to committee updates.
I'm sorry, before we move on, I apologize. There was a slide that was preceded the motion, but I just want to quickly mention the next steps, if I may, if there's just a minute. Sorry, this is Cord Bucher. So just thank you everyone for the vote. Just, we'll start work on like rolling out how implementation looks. Strategy committee, we'll be working on that, but working with the other committees on it. And I mean, I think just reiterating that like the work now is also to continue not just carrying out the work, but we can make improvements to the plan. It is meant to be a living plan that's built into the document that we want to continue to get feedback. And if there are things we can better phrase or better do, we want to do that. So more to come on this. And of course, we'll be presenting at quarterly YDC meetings. I really like the idea that was shared in our breakout around how we tie in everything we're doing in the council meetings to the plan. So we'll be looking at ways that we can make sure that we are doing this, keeping this alive, both in the bigger council work and the committees. So thanks again for your time today on this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Cord, and really appreciate all your work in like synthesizing all of the ideas and thoughts into more concrete actions for us to continue to help operationalize and support the team with. So thank you, Cord and team. All right, committee updates.
Yeah, I think this is Brian Duffy for the record. I think the main update, we opened it up to folks who attended. We had a meeting yesterday with members of our kind of existing youth committee and then some newer folks, younger, young adults, kind of folks that we're just coming together. We even have Jay Collette was on the meeting earlier. She's not formally on the council, I guess, but I just call out, as an example of somebody who attended that gathering as an interested party. So I guess it just would open up into I see Nate's here in the room and Alex is online, and maybe I've heard Hannah. I can't remember if there's others. Certainly a number of staff are there, but just open it up to the group who are able to come together. And if you would like to say a few words about that get together yesterday, and that would be, I think, the main update.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Nate Latanzio, council member. Yeah, I attended the meeting yesterday, and honestly, I really enjoyed it. It was just nice to like have that, like, I mean, that was my first time joining, so like, it's not like the first meeting, but it was the first time for me joining, and it was nice because it felt very like foundational, get to know you. It felt like it's like a safe space for other young people, young adults to join. And honestly, I'm just glad that like we've got that conversation started and was able, like, one of the things we did is we went through like the agenda today to kind of get an idea of like, okay, what's going forward. And I think that just as a general best practice, I think for future meetings would be really helpful just in terms of supporting young people's understanding, like, hey, what is going, what is gonna be talked about, what decisions may potentially be made, things like that. So I think it was like a great starting place, at least for me coming in, and looking forward to meeting more and like establishing more like intention and strategy and all of the different pieces, especially as it relates to our strategic plan, how to make that the most effective space, inclusive, accessible, all those great things.
Thank you, Dave. Alex, Hannah?
Yeah, I can speak to it. It was really nice to just be able to meet all of the youth members and get to understand why everyone joined the council and to sort of get a foundational sort of background onto why everyone decided to apply and how they found their way here. So it was just honestly just nice to know that little foundational background knowledge.
Thank you for
Aw.
sharing. Hannah?
I agree. Just getting to know everyone. That was my first meeting, and getting to go over the agenda for today before the meeting kind of helped me to feel more prepared. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you all for sharing. It's really helpful to hear that pre-meeting is helpful just to get acquainted with, you know, what the process is like and how to engage. And if, as you further engage in the council, if you have feedback for us, please continue to give it to us because we want to make sure we're helping support your participation, removing barriers and whatnot. So thank you for being here today and participating.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know, there were some staff attendees as well and kind of helping facilitate. So just thanks to Paul and Joy and Tanisha and Abraham, Melissa, and doing a lot of work to kind of pull together the gathering of folks. Sally wasn't able to be there because she's out, but just, yeah, good first step. And I said this at the beginning, but I'll say it again. I think represented, I think, a couple of years post 3 year, right? Post COVID, coming out of COVID into like, what does our youth committee need to look like? And you took some just from figuring out. And so to kind of get to this moment at the point that was really the very end of Maricella's tenure felt symbolic and powerful, and she's always said she'll always be a resource. So I don't know, staff, any other observations for those who attended? I hope I didn't miss anybody. I know Tunisia, anybody said her name. So yeah. Paul?
Well, you didn't say my name.
Anya was there too. Anya was there too. I forgot.
No, but I wanted to repeat the comment that I made yesterday. This is the first time that ever that the council and its previous versions have that many young people so actively involved, and that was completely heartwarming and exciting, and just like I'm almost getting sentimental now. I promise not to cry. But seriously, I think it's a great beginning. And I hope this energy and momentum will continue. It's all in your hands, guys.
Thank you, Anya. Sorry. So, thank you.
Parsa Chanrami, thank you again to the YDO team for supporting, and then also a huge shout out to Maricela for continuing to stay engaged and supporting the youth committee. All right, now we move to public comments, and so I'm going to check in with Melissa. Did anyone signed up for public comment?
We do have one guest who has signed up for public comment, and she is online. They are online. Christine Meacham, if you are ready to give public comment, you may unmute. Or you may put your comment in the chat.
Melissa, while we're seeing if Christine is on or jumping on, Molly has her hand up. Molly, sorry we didn't mean to miss you.
Maybe it was the first.
Maybe it's a wave.
I think it's the person.
Yeah. Oh, it's the mouse.
Oh, is it the cursor? Oh, sorry, Molly.
Oh, it looks like Christina's left the meeting. She was here, but she's left.
Oh, okay.
Looking at the guest list.
Yeah, looks
If-
on screen. I don't see.
Yep, nope, if she pops back on, I guess we can have, maybe she can have another chance, but, okay. There's no one else who has said that they would like to make public comments, so.
Thank you for helping us track that, Melissa. Should we move to, okay, all right, Parsa Chanrani here. The next item is YDO meeting roundup and discussion. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, just again, appreciation for everybody being here. Appreciation for those who were able to drive down. And for those who are online, your engagement, your questions, your comments, fabulous. This kind of happens, right? We try to keep you on task, and then when we get off task, we then get you back on task, and then we come to what, 1:45-ish or whatever time it is, and you may get a few minutes back to your day, kind of. Maybe, I don't know, Jeff, we might be doing that tour a little bit early.
Hopefully that's okay, Jeff.
Okay. Jeff's here, you know, so just appreciation. I don't know, roundup items, again, appreciate. I'm just kind of working backwards on the strategic plan. We know that there's some really great ideas that have come up, some really good and important questions around, oh, what is this word, like, can we refine and ensure that we're actually capturing the right ideas? So we welcome that, like, this is, we're not needing to put something forward that is both, well, it's not gonna sit on a shelf, but there's also, we're able to refine things so that we're can actually implement them. So appreciate your engagement around that and your vote. I know it was tight. And I hope that's just a sign of, like, we've had, you know, we had more people who kind of had to take off here later in this, as we get to the end of the meeting and later afternoon. So appreciate that. But again, you, Cord and I and the rest of the team, we will get our heads together and make sure that as a part of each meeting, we're giving you both information about, like, how things connect and tie together, and how we can, you know, report out on progress. For those who've been around for a while, we actually had kind of a strategic plan. We called it a placemat or something. We got the format from some other agency that just said, here's the, you know, overarching strategy, here's the or here's the imperative, the strategy, and the action and or outcomes, and try to tell you, like, here's how, you know, in one page, here's the progress. So we'll figure out ways to report that, but also what I'm hearing too, or seeing and acknowledge then the need for you all to have more engagement in the items that are in that plan as council members. So stay tuned for committee meetings around juvenile justice, which has continued to be active and really important, and youth committee, and this planning/strategy committee, whatever name we ultimately give it, so that we can both keep the progress going, but figure out ways that you can be really thoughtfully engaged in the plan. And please be sure to, I think already a calendar invitation exists for November. We do have our annual retreat. I can't remember the exact dates, but
18th and 19th.
18th and 19th.
Oh, it's on the slides too.
Oh, there's a slide.
I think there's a slide.
There's a slide. Oh, Tasia, maybe there's a slide with, like, some dates on it.
The next
But
meeting dates.
that will be an opportunity for us to dive more deeply into some aspects of the plan, or those places where we need to do a little bit more brainstorming. That's, I think, a critical next step. Again, making sure committee meetings for the two that I think need to be more actively planned. Juvenile justice, you guys are kicking butt, so keep doing that important work. So that's, I think, key. We'll go back to our budget stuff, budget information. We're still waiting to hear back from the around our Title 20 federal dollars, so we'll keep you informed. Happy to send an email and give you some kind of update when I hear it, but we'll let you know how that goes. We're pushing on RFAs if there's interest in being an evaluator in the room. it's still, I think, some opportunity to do that if your time allows, but Paul, maybe 8 to 10 hours of work-ish?
Yeah,
probably?
6 to 10.
6 to 10, depending on how much, so, and we have ways for you to say if there's a potential or real conflict of interest. You actually have to state it, but we can also make sure that, oh, I'm, I don't know, Jeff, I'm not trying to pick on you, but if it's a Wasco County based entity and you have a connection, we wouldn't have you evaluate that. Or if Youthera was applying for some reason, we would say, yeah, you're not gonna review applications from them, nor maybe if they're applying in a particular grant area, we'd say, we'll just have you look at something in, youth and gang violence reduction, or have you look at some other area, right? So we manage that among council members so that there are no real or potential conflicts of interest. And so just keep that in mind. Molly, you have a point. Yeah.
I do at the end when it's just the wrap up. I have a question.
Okay, yeah, I'll figure out if I have anything else to say, but budget, we'll keep you informed, evaluation, RFA. I don't know if there's other kind of key takeaways from today's meeting, just know, the last thing I'll say, and it's probably on a slide, we will be, I don't know, Andy, I'm looking in your direction. I think we're gonna try to do our fall meeting at Warm Springs. So that I can't remember if that's like on the invitation yet. We were actually thinking of this meeting being at Warm Springs, but we shifted, and so Warm Springs September September 11th, just a Thursday.
Oh, it is. Tanisha, can you bring up the slide that has our next meetings on it?
Yeah, it's at the bottom of the agenda too.
Okay.
September 11th and December 11th.
It is.
Yeah. So those are kind of quick roundup items for me. Thanks for your time. Molly.
So I guess my last plug is the JJDPA Act is up. And so can we send out to our council members the opportunity for the toolkit to potentially reach out to our delegation to ask for their support?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, good point. JGB, Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act reauthorization, which our Juvenile Justice Committee and our State Advisory Group, we talked about that. So that's information we can definitely share, Molly. Thanks. Anything else for the good of the order? I'll turn it back to Carson.
If I may, really quick.
Yeah.
Nate Latanzio, council member. I just wanted to give a huge shout out to all staff here, YDO, as someone that's a part of a lot of different spaces and teams and councils and meetings like that. Like granted, it's been 2 times here, but still, like each of these times, the level of inclusion, accessibility, how relational these meetings are, how the hybrid, how technologically it's set up in a very fluent way. I just want to give huge shout out to y'all. Clearly, there's a lot of intention and skill put in to running these spaces. So just big appreciate y'all.
Thank you so much, Nate. I really appreciate folks making it out here in person and joining online. We're looking forward to seeing you in the fall in Warm Springs. Okay, wonderful. Thank you again to the team and Brian for all your organization and support. And we hope you have a great rest of the day. So meeting adjourned officially at 1:52 p.m. on June 12th. Thank you very much, everybody. What time to spend?
Sure.